Welcome back, everyone, to Double Take, a football podcast streaming everywhere you get podcasts and also on our new YouTube channel. I know this says an NFL podcast. Well, that's because we're talking NFL right now, but we will be coming soon with hopefully a college football also podcast where Savage and I will take on that when it comes. But this is our NFL podcast, our NFL segment. And you guys already know what we're here for. I'm joined by my good friends, Steven Savage, Daniel Gonzalez. How are you guys?
Doing good. Ready to get into the thick of it today, boys.
Yeah, we are.
So we are about to dive into a debate putting together our top 10 quarterback lists. And here's the thing. We're making it interesting this year. Last time we did a top 10 list, every single one of us had a different list. But this year, our goal, our plan is to somewhat have a show list, a list that we could all feel decent about at the very least. And so this one's going to be a pretty fiery episode. So if you're looking for a debate, this is definitely the show. And we're starting season 3 off with a bang. So just real quick, before we really get into our top 10 lists, we're going to once again go through our criteria of what we're basing our list on. Okay. We put out a list on our last episode of season 2. And this is what we're going to be basing our quarterbacks off of. First, what is the team success of the quarterback? 2, what were the statistical achievements of that quarterback? 3, what were the personal achievements of that quarterback? All pros, Pro Bowl, MVP consideration, things of that nature. What was the degree of difficulty of the quarterback, which is based on schedule, team construction, and reliant on the QB? And then also, is this consistent in the previous 2 or 3 seasons? And I think that's going to be an important indicator for today. And then also, what is the talent and the potential of the quarterback moving forward? And we added this one at the end of the show. Do they have a clutch gene? Do they have it, as Savage would point out, have the ability to figure it out when that opportunity is presented? And so that is our list for our top 10. Do you guys have anything to add, or do you guys know do you guys want to just start at number 1?
I mean, would it be better to start at 10 and work your way up to 1? Who knows? I mean, do we start at 5 and work both ways? I'm just kidding. But
I feel like we should start at 1 just because we already know what the answer is.
Yeah.
Get the consensus out of the way and let's get to debating.
All right. So at number 1, Dak Prescott, best quarterback. I'm just kidding. I just want to start season 3 with a laugh.
The funniest thing about that, on our screen, as soon as you said that, because Savage's camera automatically zooms in and moves around, as soon as you said that, it zoomed in like it was a TikTok, and
yeah,
it's editing. That's what it looked like right there. That was hilarious.
But no, clearly the best quarterback in the NFL, the greatest quarterback of all time, is Patrick Mahomes, coming off of an incredible season, a season where he didn't have weapons, really. He had Travis Kelce and a bunch of guys who like to drop passes throughout the year. He did have a solid defense that did help him in the Super Bowl, but ultimately he was presented with the opportunity to figure it out, and he actually did it in the biggest of games, in the biggest of moments, in the biggest of plays that was on him. He had to go and make those plays. But yeah, I think clearly it's Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about a quarterback who, yes, he had the second best defense in the NFL statistically. But his offensive line was middle of the pack. His receiving core was in the bottom half of the league, and look what he did. And you talk about in the postseason where, and I'm going to use myself as an example. I wasn't picking Kansas City to win those playoff games, and it wasn't because of Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't because of Andy Reid. I didn't think that his weapons would show up for him in the big moments, in the big games against good competition. because in the regular season that they struggled with that. But they did show up. They did play his butt off for Patrick, and they came in with a Super Bowl. And we even said before the postseason ever happened, if Patrick Mahomes is able to take a team like this to a Super Bowl, not much less win it, just get there, it's one of the greatest achievements that an NFL quarterback has ever had. Not only did he get there, but he won it. So he's got to be the top one. And it's not even a debate at this point.
Yeah, and to me, it's not only that he won it, but how he won that Super Bowl is that it was him making plays. You had the 2 scrambles. You had the Kelsey drag. You had finding McCole Hardman on the end zone on that corn dog route combo that they do in Kansas City. I mean, it was the fourth quarter there. It was just perfect football from Mahomes. And so, yeah, you're not going to find me disagreeing with any of y'all's takes on this one.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and let's hop into number 2. Savage, who do you got? And then Daniel, you go.
Yeah, I think when you look at there really needs to like almost be like it's 1 to 2, but there's a huge gap between 1 and 2. I mean, there's a chasm worth of space between who the second best quarterback in the league is. Me personally, this won't be a shocker for people who are big fans of the show. I'm going to go with my LSU kid, Joe Burrow, as the second best quarterback in the league. The only criticism that people can have of Burrow is that he's injury prone. And that, the best ability is availability, sure. But when he's healthy, he is definitely the second best quarterback in the league. And whenever he's injured, he's still a top 5 quarterback. And so last year we saw him pretty injured, banged up with the calf strain. That shouldn't be around anymore this upcoming season. He'll be back healthy. If he can stay upright, he's the second best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, I think because we also said part of the criteria is talent, right? Potential, what they can be. And I think it would be very difficult to do a list with quarterbacks who are injury prone and have to factor that in. That would be already difficult in itself. But if we're looking at what they can provide you, and I did this research like right before the show. So I got rankings of what all their what their defense was ranked, what their offensive line was ranked, what the receiving corps was ranked. And for Joe Burrow, it was a lot more difficult because he didn't play the whole year. But it gives you kind of like, okay, this is where they're kind of at, because they did go 4-2 or 4-3 without him. So I think it gives a good sample size because they got really good quarterback play or decent quarterback play in his absence. But for Joe Burrow, he had the 22nd ranked defense, 21st ranked offensive line, and a top 5 receiving corps, which the receiving corps is great, yes. And I think that defense plays better when Joe Burrow's on the field. So I think he has an overall impact on the team. And so for me, he is number 2 until the only thing that, like Savage said in his opening monologue about Joe Burrow, if it wasn't about injury, this would not be an issue for some people. Because last that we saw him, they started the season slow, which they always do. It's kind of like the Bengal way, it seems like. They're always going to start off slow. But as soon as Joe Burrow got healthy, you saw them starting to get more comfortable starting. And then that win against San Francisco was huge. They needed that huge win. And Joe Burrow played near perfect in that game. So I think how he played out, we probably would have seen what we have been the last couple of years. And so for me, until he proves that he can't play like that when healthy, I can't put anybody above him just yet. Unless another one of these quarterbacks has another great season and is able to, win big in the playoffs like he has, and then we can start having the conversation. But until Joe Burrow can't do it, then we can have that conversation. He just was unfortunate and he's been injured, so he can't continue to do it. It's not that his situation will let him. He just keeps getting hurt. So until he proves me otherwise, he's number 2.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add to that. I also have Joe Burrow at number 2. And the biggest reason I have it is because there's only one quarterback in the NFL right now who's ever beaten Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. His name is Joe Burrow. And you could argue that he almost did. He had an opportunity to do it again last time they played in the championship game. Joe Burrow is actually the only person who can rival Patrick Mahomes. Like we're saying, barring injury, I think it's pretty easy for us to say that Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in the NFL because he's done what literally no other quarterback has ever done. And multiple quarterbacks had the opportunity to do in this postseason. Because usually when we talk about it, it's just like, oh, well, the Chiefs are so good and this and this and that. And, they don't ever have a chance. Josh Allen had the opportunity. Lamar Jackson had the opportunity. And even Tua had the opportunity. They just didn't. Joe Burrow has. And so he has to be the second best quarterback in the NFL. Daniel, who's your number 3? And then Savage.
This one is hard for me, just because I only believe that there's 2 elite quarterbacks in this league. Nonetheless, there's going to be a huge discrepancy. I think I'm at a point where you guys could easily sway me to someone else. Right now, for me, it's Lamar Jackson. But I have issues with him at number 3. The only reason I believe that he's number 3 is because he has 2 MVPs. And that's it. That is the only reason why he's number 3. Because if you look at his postseason, it's hard to argue for him because of that. You had an opportunity to beat Patrick Mahomes, and you didn't do it. Not only didn't you do it, but you threw a costly interception midway through the 4th quarter. And your postseason record before that was not impressive either. But for me, he's number 3 because he is a 2-time MVP. That team is still going to be intact. And I still think a second year in this offense will benefit him a lot. And so for me, he's number 3.
Yeah, I feel pretty dug in on Lamar at 3.
Okay.
So let me give you some more reasons to believe that you had the right take, because I believe you did. He has over a 75% win percentage in the regular season in the NFL. That's crazy, especially in an AFC North that, like, even the bad teams are still going to get ready for those games. You talk about the playoff success. You show me another quarterback on this list whose career is just stacked with playoff success.
Yeah.
Right now,
that's the issue for a lot of guys on this list.
We have really only one proven playoff quarterback, and then we have and then we have 2 other guys that have proven something, but one of them is always hurt, and the other one's out of his prime. And so that was a very dramatic camera cut. I don't know what happened there.
Dude, I love it. It just makes everything you say way more interesting. Like, it's just so dramatic.
Boom, comic book here, there. Oh, duck, zoom in, zoom out. There we go. So the only other quarter you're mentioning the loss to Mahomes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means that he can't be 2, which we all understand that. Mm-hmm. But then in terms of, like, how do they do against playing Mahomes, I think that Lamar has one of the better games in terms of how they played Mahomes. I don't think Lamar went out there and played a terrible game. I mean, that Chiefs defense was the number 2 defense in the league, and the Baltimore's wide receiving core still, for the most part, it's better this year, but it's still pretty suspect.
Yeah, they're 19th.
19th. So it's not like they're fantastic on that end. And so the fact that he was still able to get there to a 1 seed, he has the 2 MVPs. And then I also think there's like 10% of it that he saved the NFL history books this year by not allowing Brock Purdy to win an MVP. And so I think for some of that, I have him ranked 3, but also I think pretty clearly he's the 3rd best quarterback in this league.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I agree. I think that in order for me to be fair, I mean, we got to put that playoff game and also this season into context. I mean, Lamar Jackson, like you said, Daniel, is in his first year in a new offense.
Yeah.
And you made it to the AFC Championship game. Like, granted, yeah, you had the best defense in the NFL, which is a credit to your organization and shouldn't be a knock against Lamar Jackson. And even though his numbers weren't sexy or anything like that, he still was the main driving force of their number 1 rushing attack. And I'm not going to blame Lamar Jackson for his offense coordinator in his first championship game to go away from what worked for you. I don't subscribe to the idea that Lamar Jackson has that much of a say in what they call. At least in terms of whether it's a run or a pass. I mean,
especially the discrepancy in first year in the system. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so huge of what they called in the AFC Championship game. It's ridiculous. And so I can't put that all on Lamar Jackson. And I believe that next year the team will be better. His offense will be better. And I think he will be right back contending for the AFC title. And he's got 2 MVPs. Like Savage said, his regular season record isn't just good; it's great. And for a running quarterback, that's really, really good. And I do running quarterback in quotations because Lamar Jackson has shown that he can sling it. And so I'm very confident with Lamar Jackson at number 3. Number 4, I'm going to go ahead and take this one. This one I'm pretty set at. I'm not going to be moved. I have CJ Stroud at number 4. The only concern that I have is that it is one season. But let's put this into context. CJ Stroud went to what we thought at the time was the worst place that he can go to, with a rookie head coach, rookie running back, rookie wide receivers, a young receiving core, a tight end that came from Dallas who I think is pretty good, but obviously they had not had a winning culture there in forever. And due to CJ Stroud, they went 10-6, won a playoff game in the wild card, and went 2.5 quarters with the Baltimore Ravens in the divisional round. I mean, I don't think you can look at that game, even though he didn't necessarily play his best football. There's no way that you can go to that divisional game and say, yeah, CJ Stroud lost this game. That was a game to where Houston proved that they were a young team, that they hadn't been there before. Offensive line committed the most penalties that they've ever committed all year long. And so CJ Stroud, I don't think he only met expectations, but he exceeded them exponentially. And so that is why I have more hope for him that he's not going to do what Jalen Hurts did and regress. I think he only gets better. And so I say that CJ Stroud is the number 4 quarterback, and he's also the best quarterback in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had Stroud at 4 too. I was bracing myself whenever you decided to take this one because I was really nervous where you were going to go with it. But you went where I went on this, and not only did he win a wild card game, but he won a wild card game against what I think 2/3 of this show would consider one of the greatest playoff football quarterbacks we've ever seen in Joe Flacco. I wonder if he's going to get any love on this top 10 list today. But he played great. I picked Stroud to go into Baltimore and beat Baltimore.
He did.
And for 30 minutes of that game, I felt really good about that pick.
Yeah.
Man, Here's what Stroud's rookie year reminds me in team success a lot of Dak's rookie year, except here's the difference. The running game in Dallas is what we relied on Dak's rookie year. The passing game in Houston is what they relied on. So really, it doesn't remind me much of Dak's rookie year. It reminds me of Zeke's rookie year. He came in, he took the league by storm, and I think he's going to be running things for a few years. And I think that there's no reason to believe it's not going to stop or slow down because the quarterback position doesn't atrophy at the same rate that the running back position does. I think Houston found their guy. I think that if we do a coach ranking list, I think DeMeco Ryan might land in a very similar spot as Stroud lands. And it's only 1 year, but we only had – it's not like this is his third year and this is his first year of success. Mm-hmm. This is 100% of his career. He's been this good. And so I have Stroud at 4 too, man.
No, I have Stroud at 4 as well, and for the same reason that you guys had him there. You play two of the best defenses in the NFL in the postseason. Against Cleveland, you had a QBR of 98.5, scale from 0 to 100. Dang near perfect game. Against the best defense in football that we agree at that time was the number one defense in Baltimore, he was close to average. Against a really good team, like David said, that game was mired in offensive line penalties at the start or throughout the game. So it was really hard as a quarterback to get that rhythm.
And dropped passes too. There was a couple of drops
passes as well. Yeah, like really, like Dalton, he hit Dalton Schultz on a dime on a corner route near the sideline, and then he just let it go straight through his hands. And that was going to be a first down inside Baltimore territory, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And then, like you guys said earlier in your guys' explanations, they were not – I think the DeMeco Ryan point from Savage is 100% true. This was 100% of their careers at this point. And it wasn't like a coach who was a former player going to a team that had a stacked roster. It's nothing like that. It was a team, like David said, that we believed was going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And they ended up being a really good football team throughout the year with a quarterback. The reason why he's number 4, this is the main reason why he's number 4. It doesn't look like any moment's too big for him. Doesn't. It doesn't take him, and again, this is just what I've seen. It doesn't take him a long time to get started. Like he's a self-starter. Like he's going to make plays at the beginning of the game and have good drives at the beginning of the game. He's been consistent throughout games, I believe. And like you said, I think he's only going to get better. I think this team, this offense, he's going to have, I forgot what his offensive coordinator, Slowski, he's going to stay for another season. So I think that's going to be really big for him. So for me, it's CJ Stroud. And again, I want people, because we've had a topic of conversation of like, hey, we're not going to crown guys too early. We're not crowning him. We're not crowning him. We're just saying, based on what we've seen last year, what we believe his trajectory is going to be, we think that he can continue this and he has the opportunity to. So CJ Stroud, number 4.
Yeah. And again, I had this guy midway through the season. I said he was the second best quarterback in the NFL. And he was playing like it, and he continued to play it until the very, very end. So 1 through 4, we agree. 5 through 10, I think, is where things are going to get interesting. So buckle up, people. But Savage, who do you have as your number 5 quarterback?
So we looked through the rest of the names that we could put on this list, right? You have guys who are typically good in the regular season, who don't do good in the playoffs. You have guys who have some really good playoff moments, but maybe they're not great in the regular season. You don't really have anyone who has proven it both in the playoffs and in the regular season outside of one name. This guy is on the decline, but what he did, this was projected to be a bottom 5 roster They were about to move and get another quarterback this year. He brought some unnamed rookie receiver into the Pro Bowl. And my number 5 pick, I'm going with the dude out of Dallas, Texas, not Dak, but Matthew Stafford, Highland Park kid. I have Matthew Stafford as my number 5 quarterback. What he was able to do with this team and how he led this team, no one thought they'd be a playoff team. At first, on first things first, when the Cowboys beat the Rams, Brew put up a tomato can for the Rams because they were one of the tomato cans that we beat early in the year. They ended up not being a tomato can. And the reason why is because Stafford led that team. Cooper Kupp was down, but he turned Puka Nacua into a beast of a receiver in his rookie year. That defense was a bunch of young guys who they were unproven guys. That needed a veteran leader, someone who's won a Super Bowl, which I don't believe anyone else who we put on this list, from what I understand, if I had to guess where y'all are going, he's the only one left who's won a Super Bowl. He has proven to be a great arm talent. And so my number 5 pick, I'm going with Matt Stafford.
Daniel?
Well, dang it, Savage, I think you talked me into it. For me, he was fringe top 5. Again, like you said, I'm going to reinforce the fact he is declining. Mm-hmm. His stats don't look the same as they did previously in his career. And then even if we want to just dive in further on what he did this year against Detroit in the postseason, he did play really, really well. He did. He put a 74.7 QBR in that game. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there a controversial call at the end of that game that costed the Rams the game?
There was a pass interference on Puka that wasn't called. Right.
I mean, he was 25 for 36, 367 yards, 69 completion percentage. He averaged 10.2 yards per attempt. Not completion, per attempt. For 2 touchdowns, no picks. And the game was this close. This close. Now, if the argument is going to be, hey, that was against the 23rd ranked defense, if you're going to be a top 5 quarterback, you got to score more than 23 points. It's the postseason. I think we can all agree playoff football is drastically different than in the regular season. Teams play different in the postseason.
They play harder.
And Detroit went to the NFC Championship game. That's a big deal. And so I was surprised when I was doing my list initially, and I was like, Matthew Stafford looks really good. And with his degree of difficulty, like Savage said, none of us had the Rams in the playoffs. If I remember, I don't think any of us did.
I thought they were going to draft Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I don't think. I think so. I think in the beginning of this year, when we were talking about the Rams, we actually threw out the idea of what would it be like if they would get Caleb Williams. So I'm with you, Savage. I think you talked me into it. I had him around 6, 7, but I got to put him at 5. Like you said, he recently won a Super Bowl, played really well in the playoffs, and he took an undrafted kid and made him a Pro Bowler. That's a good resume for this year. It really is. So I agree. Matthew Stafford, number 4 or number 5.
I think the only thing with Stafford is he is on the decline, and I don't know if he can stay healthy. And at this point of his career, he has to have those things in order for me to consider him to be a top 5 quarterback. I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you guys are saying. It's just the last 2 seasons he's missed games due to injury.
There's been nothing to suggest that he's not going to be healthy.
Well, he got a little nicked earlier in the season, and it was a routine hit where he kind of got hurt.
But that happens all. Like, if we're going to talk about injury prone, how many other guys down this list have proven to be injury prone? You know, I know a guy that Daniel probably wants to put at number 5, who I will turn around immediately and argue that he's more injury prone than Stafford.
At number 5 or number 6?
Well, David. A guy who David's going to be, that I think David's going to want to put here at number 5, who's more injury prone than Stafford. And we put Joe Burrow at number 2, even though he's missed like 1.5 of the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, but he's also significantly younger than Stafford,
which is even more concerning that he's already this injury prone this early.
Yeah, but I think how we view players as they get older, the injuries, the regularity and the severity of the injuries get significantly worse as you age. I'm with you. I don't see him getting injured. I don't see that. I do see more of a probability that he will decline. But I think we're just going off of the success that he had this season, David.
Right.
Not projecting unless that's part of the criteria, we're projecting where they're going to be.
Some of it. I think the projection has more to do with the younger players.
But I don't even think we had that. I mean, we had potential, we had talent and potential, but that's really put in for like the CJ Strouds, the Justin Herberts, the Jordan Loves.
Great. Okay, cool.
And so if we want to say, hey, in a vacuum, best case scenario, they all stay healthy.
Yeah, that's essentially what we're saying.
Then I'll go Stafford at 5. Because I mean you can't argue with the success that one he's had, but also that he is currently having. And I don't think that other than those 2 receivers, which I would argue he was the reason why Cooper Kupp became who he became, and also Puka Nacua is who he is, because I don't think Cooper Kupp was this with Jared Goff. I mean, he was good. But the reason why the Rams were as good as they were was because of who was their running back at the time?
Todd Gurley.
I mean, they ran the ball extremely, extremely well, which opened up the pass game. The Rams, other than till like the last half of the season, the Rams didn't have a running game.
Yeah, they developed a running game. Yeah, eventually.
They developed a running game at the end of the season, which allowed for Stafford, I think, to finally be able to consistently hit Cooper Kupp, who was no longer double covered, at least all the time, because you have a Puka Nacua. But other than those 2 guys, you really don't look at this roster and think, oh man, this is a really, really good team. Now they have a really great head coach, but Stafford is a part of that as well. So I'm okay with going Stafford at 5. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think his rankings, like he had a good offensive line. He had a top 10 offensive line and a 6th ranked receiving core. But that defense was going to be a lot to overcome. They were 19th.
And how much of that receiving core is because of Stafford?
Yeah, a lot of it. The Rams are really good at drafting receivers. They really are. I think they know what they're looking for. They want guys who can run routes, who are strong runners, and can make contested, difficult catches.
Yeah.
Not a guy who's going to run a 4-3, 4-2. Like I feel like a lot of these teams are about to do in this NFL draft. They're going to look at the speed and be like, oh, he's a first rounder. Mm-hmm. That's not what the Rams do. They draft fundamentally sound route runners who are strong catchers and strong runners. And so, yeah, like he elevated those receivers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because like Puka was a 5th round draft pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Kupp, I don't think he was drafted very high either. Well, he was a third rounder, but he wasn't like a first round draft pick, and he turned them into Pro Bowlers, arguably all pro potential, and Puka receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I think he plays a big part of that.
Yeah.
So, Daniel, who do you have at number 6?
This one was a toss-up for me. Again, like I said before we started the show, you guys could easily sway me differently. There's two guys that on this list that I'm debating with, and they're Josh Allen and Jared Goff. I'm going to lean towards Jared Goff in this situation because he just took a team with a bad with a mediocre defense, because I think they had their moments. And he has done amazing and wonders with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. Jahmyr Gibbs was a godsend for him. I think when you look at Jared Goff's career, the most times that he has a success, he has a good running game. Now, he had the second best offensive line in the league, so I think that's great for him. He needed that. But I think the ability for him to where we believe they were going to be a competitive team this year with Dan Campbell. We did think that. But we didn't think that they would go to the NFC Championship game this season. We didn't think that at all. Not for one bit did I think they were going to the NFC Championship game. Not only that, I don't know if we can all agree on this, but I just want to throw this idea out there. Had Dan Campbell not wrecked their chances with some all-time terrible decisions, they go to a Super Bowl, right? So like we're saying with Lamar Jackson, had his offensive coordinator just called the game that they played all season, we have to do the same thing for Jared Goff.
Thank you.
Had his head coach not made the boneheaded decisions that he made, had his receivers in key third down moments not dropped passes, we're having a different conversation. So for me, he's gone to a Super Bowl before. I know it was a long time ago, but like Savage has said, there's other quarterbacks on this list who've not even remotely come close to that at all. He's gone to a different team that we believe was purgatory for quarterbacks to go to at their prime or end tail of their years. And he was able to lead them to a winning record last season when they had no business of having a winning record. And they go to the NFC Championship game where we believe they probably were a first to second round exit. And look what he did. So for me, I talk myself more to feel more confident about it, but I have Jared Goff at number 6.
And Daniel, the same way that we did with Lamar, I'll even make you more confident in this pick of Goff at 6 because that's where I had Goff at 6. He is the only other quarterback on this list that has made it to a Super Bowl. And then what I'm going to call it is a near Super Bowl because he did everything he needed to do to make it. And if Dan Campbell didn't coach like he was a fan of the Lions, they probably would have been in the Super Bowl. Dan Campbell is a junior high level coach in terms of his emotional, I'm going to go for it every time. He's like me and Madden. And so I have Goff at 6 for all the reasons that you're saying. And also you show me the quarterback that's made it to a Super Bowl and has made it to another conference championship that's still on this list. I don't think there's one of those guys left on this list. And if we're talking about postseason performance, that has to be involved in some of that. And the main difference between playoff football and regular season football is that you learn who knows how to win games in the postseason. There's a certain kind of way you have to play. You don't necessarily have to run up the board. You just have to control the ball, be secure, like run your stuff. It's not like the first to 30 wins like a lot of regular season games. And so I have Goff at 6, and I thought it was kind of funny, the two guys that got traded, fast forward a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's basically you get basically the same results, just one of them ended up winning a Super Bowl. And so
and to your point, I think those trades probably needed to happen because what both teams are needing from their quarterbacks was different. Way different.
Yep.
So I think you're right. I think that trade needed to happen. And I think each of them would probably say, hey, we do that again. Because I think they both feel like they've got the right guy for each of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I think when we think about Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff, it's kind of like how we feel, or at least how we should feel about and we just lost Savage here, but that's okay.
Here we go.
It's kind of how I think we should feel about like Jake Ferguson and Dalton Schultz. Like Dalton Schultz was great with the Cowboys, but he's doing really well with CJ Stroud and got a brand new contract, 3 years, $36 million. Good for you, Dalton. But Jake Ferguson has also been really good for the Cowboys too. And remember, made the game-winning catch against Seattle. And so I think that was a move that we needed to make that made both teams better. I think we can say the same thing about Stafford and Jared Goff. My number 6 quarterback is Dak Prescott. I think when we look at Jared Goff, he had a top 5 rushing offense. Daniel said it, a top 2 offensive line. Yes, the defense on paper were mediocre, but in the postseason, they actually showed up to the game. Dan Campbell has proven to be a great head coach. So Jared Goff had a lot going for him to put him in a situation to do well. We like to talk about that Super Bowl all those years ago. Again, I'm going to say this again because it matters. He completed 55% of his passes, threw for 6.7 yards a throw, had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions in the postseason. He played in 3 games and only threw 1 touchdown. And in the Super Bowl, he only scored 3 points. So
I'd love to see Dak score 3 points in a Super Bowl.
I mean, I would love to see anybody in Dallas be able to make it. And right. To me, that's the biggest thing about my Dak Prescott take is you have a running game that was middle of the pack at best, and they were probably only middle of the pack because we passed to run the ball when we were supposed to run to pass the ball this season. You have a defense who in big moments in big games also disappear in the postseason. And like, I'm not even saying they didn't even show up against Green Bay, like at all. And we're talking about how, we had Jared Goff had receivers dropping passes in critical moments in the game. Same thing happened with CeeDee Lamb in 2 straight opening drives to force us to punt the ball, and we're in a hole. And so when you look at the teams in terms of offensively, what Jared Goff had in a top 5 rushing offensive, top 2 offensive line, Dak had a middle of the pack, if even a running game, an offensive line that was inconsistently healthy throughout the season, was the second place MVP candidate, the second team All-Pro, was the league leader in touchdown passes, and dropped his interception from being tied for the most interceptions in a season to being tied for, or he might have been like in second place in interceptions this past season. And so I know that in the playoffs, He hasn't shown up and he hasn't played well. But again, we're missing one part of the criteria, is how much of the team's success is like, what was the degree of difficulty for both of these quarterbacks? I think that Dak had the biggest degree of difficulty because of his team construction. And I think a lot of games that we won this year was only because Dak showed up and played the way that he played. We would have won 13 games this year if the defense would have done their job against Miami. We would have beaten Arizona if the offensive line wouldn't have been committing penalties every time we made a play, and the defense didn't give up 300 yards of rushing. And again, this is not a case of him being a top 5 quarterback. This is just saying he's number 6.
The zoom in is crazy right now.
So you think, let me get this clear.
Yeah.
You think Dak's degree of difficulty was harder than Goff's?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Oh,
100%.
Wow. Goff did not field a defense for basically all of the year. He had no defense. Cowboys had a defense. And you can't, and I'll also, just being a former offensive lineman myself, we were missing 60% of our line against Arizona. Now, if you want to get mad at the defense for giving up all that rushing, yes. But you can't get mad at a bunch of second stringers for holding starters.
No,
I mean, I'm
not. But what I am saying is that people look at that game at Arizona and says that's another opportunity where Dak didn't show up. But I'm saying, like, he was missing 3 offensive linemen.
Okay, what I'm saying though is Goff, his defense is way worse than Dak's defense. It's not a debate. It's proven fact that the Lions defense was like a bottom 10 defense in the league this year. They were trash. Okay? And then you look at what they were able to do, they were able to win big games. I mean, if we're going to be completely honest, now that we've had some time to step away and process, the Lions should have beat us. The only reason they didn't beat us, and everybody likes to talk bad about Mike McCarthy, Dan Campbell is more of a liability at head coach than Mike McCarthy is. Dan Campbell will literally lose them games.
Yeah, I'm going to strongly disagree with you on that, because again, we're talking about the defense of the Lions being significantly worse than the Dallas Cowboys, but whose team actually showed up in the postseason? Like that, they actually looked like they were ready to play. Not Dallas, Detroit. Like,
but that's a
postseason Detroit was a different team than regular season Detroit, and the regular season Dallas Cowboys were significantly different than postseason Dallas.
Because that's what Dak does. That's what Dak does in the playoffs, man. He's done it his whole career.
And that's the most ridiculous statement I ever heard, of blaming the quarterback for a defense not being ready to go in a postseason, when that clearly is the job of a head coach, which Mike McCarthy's, that's his biggest liability, is having his team prepared and ready to play, regular season or postseason. That can't be on Dak Prescott. You can't put that on any quarterback.
I think Savage, what probably infuriates you a lot about Dan Campbell is that in big moments, he lets his emotion affect his coaching.
Yes.
But one thing that we can never say about a Dan Campbell team is that they're not ever not ready to play.
I'll agree with that.
I think,
which is the biggest liability.
And I
bigger
think
than any liability that Dan Campbell has.
And I think in a postseason game, one thing that your team has to be able to do, or has to come into the game with, is the mentality of, I'm ready to play this game. And historically, especially as a Dallas Cowboy head coach, Mike McCarthy, even in I've seen it happen in regular season games where his team is not ready to play. So would I rather have Dan Campbell as my head coach than Mike McCarthy? Yes, I would. One thing that Dan Campbell is going to have to learn, and who knows if he'll learn this, because he's very hard-headed, he's very stubborn. And maybe the loss against the 49ers will change that in his mind of, like, I can't let my emotions make calls for me. Maybe he needed to lose a game in this magnitude for that to happen.
But you could say that's the only reason they were there in the first place, is because of how high his emotions run.
Sure, exactly. And I think you can temper those. You can still be an emotional coach, lead with fire and passion. And in the moments where you have to make the right call, you can temper those emotions to make the best call for your football team in the moment. I believe that can happen.
Well,
we've seen it happen with other head coaches.
Here's the thing. I don't think we're having this conversation about Dan Campbell if that receiver just catches the pass. I mean, because it was a good play now. Like, let's not pretend let's not pretend like it was thrown in the dirt or anything like that, or that no one was open. Like, it was going to be converted. He had an opportunity to make a play, and the receiver just dropped it. So I think we're having a different conversation probably about Dan Campbell if that receiver catches that pass.
I think Savage would still believe what he believes, because he would have been like, why would you make that call in the first place?
I would have still been like, you got bailed out, but that was the dumbest thing you could have done.
Right. I think you still would have thought that it was not the best call.
Yeah, you probably would have said it was the dumbest decision that you can make, but you're going to live with the results if they get it. But you could still say, I don't know why you would do that.
Oh, and that's what he's a young coach. He might change on that. Sure. Let's get back to the quarterbacks.
Sure.
Yeah. What I get frustrated at is that we talk. There's so much talk about they weren't ready to play, as if there's no responsibility on the player to be ready either. Like you look at some of these other quarterbacks whose coaches that we're not so sure about, like Lamar is always ready to play. Now, his offensive coordinator, they might change a game, but there's never conversation of, well, Lamar just wasn't ready. Or if you're going to be a quarterback, they have to be ready to go, man. You can't just show up and not be ready to play. And how many big Cowboy games are there where Dak just does not show up? And I'm tired of putting all of that on the coach and none of that on the quarterback. You have to show up. You have to be ready. You have to do something. You have to do something. Like, here's the thing about Romo. When Romo was the quarterback of the Cowboys, you could not say that the reason that we lost is because we had no offensive production. It was that you were always down 10 points going into the fourth. We had one deep threat ever, like on the same team. There's only one guy who could go get the ball down the field. I love
where this conversation is going.
You had Jason Witten running underneath. Everybody was double covered, and he'd throw a late pick. But it was because, man, it was like the game was in the balance. And either Romo was going to win it or he was going to lose it. Dak loses games by halftime. Nobody thought that we were coming back against Green Bay. And yes, if the defense pitched a shutout, who knows what could have happened. But no real person, no non-Cowboys fan would have watched that playoff game and thought Dallas had a chance to come back. That game was over at halftime. And I've seen that too many times for me to put Dak up at 6. I believe Daniel has seen that too many times for him to put him at 6 because he didn't put him at 6. And so when we're talking about who is the 6th best quarterback in the league, we got 2 votes on Goff, 1 vote on Dak. Who are we going to put at 6?
So you say that Lamar Jackson's always ready to play, but who's his head coach? It's John Harbaugh. No one would say that Mike McCarthy is in any way the caliber of a John Harbaugh. We even look at quarterbacks like Troy Aikman after Jimmy Johnson left, after Barry Switzer left, and you have Chan Gailey as his head coach. He's a Hall of Famer. Never had a winning season. Never had good numbers. And so to say that Dak has to be ready to play in the moment, how can you, when you have Jason Garrett as your head coach, when you have Mike McCarthy as your head coach, with Jason Garrett, you're 8-8. You're also not ready to play. A Mike McCarthy who your team in the biggest games aren't ready to play. And then we even talk about the beginning of the game in the wild card against Green Bay, who dropped 2 passes in the first 2 drives to extend the drive and forced us to punt. Was it Dak Prescott or was it CeeDee Lamb, who was also not ready to play? with a defense who not only was not ready to play, but never made an appearance in the game.
I hear what you're saying.
And here's my biggest question. If you took Jared Goff with no running game and said, hey, you're going to throw 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, does Jared Goff do it? No, because he's always needed a ground game to put up this level of production. Dak put up this level of production with no running game. So overall, we can talk again, team success. How much is that a reliance on the quarterback? We were more reliant on Dak Prescott to win than Detroit was on Jared Goff, because they actually had a running game.
You're making a lot of good points right now, David. You're doing a good job of making your case. I am not here saying that Dak deserves all of the blame. What I'm saying is you never give Dak any blame.
I give him blame, but the problem is that when you go off and you say that the defense didn't show up and that's on the quarterback, that's when I take an issue with it, because the job of the head coach is to have his team prepared. That's literally what he's hired to do. And the fact that every single time we bring up that these teams are not prepared and haven't been prepared, this is the most penalized team in the National Football League, the most undisciplined team in the National Football League, the most unprepared team in the National Football League for the last 3 seasons. And you're just like, you know what, Dak? You got to do it. No one in the history of the NFL without a great coach is able to do anything. I don't care who the quarterback is.
What I'm saying, David, no one's arguing Mike McCarthy's an elite coach. No one's arguing that we had a defense that was ready to play. No one's arguing that CeeDee Lamb didn't drop the passes. I think where my frustration comes from when you talk about Dak, and I think Daniel has some of this too, but maybe to a lesser extent because he's used to it, is that the bill never comes due for Dak when it comes to you and talking about him. There is never the bill coming due. There's never he could have played a lot better in that game. He could have,
I literally said that.
That just, it does.
I literally said that.
Then it must have been a show that I missed, because
I literally said it like 2 minutes ago.
I remember the bill coming due, and I'm saying in a real way of like, at the end of the day, sure, you want to bring up Goff's playoff stats. He still got there, man. And if we're
but it wasn't because of him.
But if we're talking about playoff
he was
success,
a part of the ride.
If we're talking about playoff success,
he literally is what Jimmy G did. Literally what Jimmy G, which you had a problem with. And Jimmy G had better numbers than Jared Goff.
Okay, then what about this playoff run? This playoff run wasn't Jimmy G.
Yeah, it wasn't Jimmy G, but he still had a dominant running game. He had a defense that showed up.
How much of the dominant running game, though, is because the defense is afraid that Amon-Ra is about to get a 50-yard bomb?
None.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not none, but let's not like say, oh, the running, like what actually happened in Dallas is that Tony Pollard got it to 100 yards sometimes, but that was because Dak was slinging it all over the field, and they were actually scared of CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks, and Tony Pollard could get his yards at the end of the game. Like that, like what you're saying for Jared Goff is the reality for Dak Prescott. He literally, the only reason why he had a ground game in Dallas was because at the end of the game, when they finally decided, you know what, we're going to run the ball because we've already run up the score so much. Like, what are we talking about here?
And here's
my thing with Cowboys Nation is that you're so frustrated with Dak Prescott. And I get it and I understand it. Do I think that he's worth the $60 million that he's asking for? No, I absolutely do not think that. And I think that they should either let him ride it out for this season and then let him go, or just let him go now. Because he's not worth 60. And I'm acknowledging he's not worth 60. But neither is Jared Goff. And I would say that I would pay Dak Prescott more than Jared Goff, especially if I'm devoid of talent and I'm asking my quarterback to do more. And Jared Goff has never shown in his career, without a ground game, without a good head coach or a great head coach, that he can do anything. Dak Prescott, at the very least, has won 12 games with no running game, with a undisciplined, most penalized football team in the National Football League. Jared Goff cannot say that. And to me, that is a clear indicator that he's better than Jared Goff.
We're just not gonna agree on this. We're not gonna agree on this. Daniel, we got to make a decision on number 6, fellas. Who are we putting in number 6?
At number 6?
I still believe Goff needs to be number 6. David believes that Dak needs to be 6. Daniel, where are you landing? You're the one that can be swayed.
Well, for me, I'm the one that picked Goff first, so I already picked Goff at number 6. Now,
have you changed your mind?
No, I haven't. But I think what David has said has made me sway on 7. Has swayed me on 7.
So are we putting Goff at 6?
Yeah, we are. But we are putting him at 6. But the argument could be made for Dak at 6 as well.
Okay.
But I think if I may start 7, I'm gonna put Dak there. I'm gonna put Dak there at 7. I think, again, I thought I was gonna put Josh Allen here, and I'll go ahead and relay the fact that I prefer Dak's game to Josh Allen's game a little bit better. And yes, they went on that magic carpet ride at the end of the season to get into the postseason. David said this, and I went and looked at it myself about Josh Allen. In that home stretch after they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, the majority of the time they won those games because of their defense and running game, not Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Like Josh Allen put up some pathetic performances in that stretch. Like I'm looking at QBRs of 31, 49, 21. He only had one game or 2 games that were above 60.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that you can say about the Bills is that they're coached really well defensively. They really are. Like his defense was a top 5 defense or top 10 defense. I actually have the ranking somewhere around here, but nonetheless, I think what we thought Lamar Jackson, what people were saying about Lamar Jackson is more true about Josh Allen than Lamar Jackson. In crunch time, Josh Allen relies more on his legs than his arm. And for me, that's not enough for me to put him at 7. I can put him at 8, but not 7. And I think to David's point, Dak had the 5th defense in the league, 6 to 10 offensive line. I had 2 different lists where one of them had them at 6, the other one had them at 10. His receiving core, though, 17. Below average receiving core. And I think a lot of the reason why they were even up that high was because of the record-breaking year CeeDee Lamb had. Because you look at Brandon Cooks, Brandon Cooks didn't get going until mid to late point of the year, right? That's when he started to actually make some plays. Michael Gallup has been a huge disappointment since he got that contract. I know the ACL kind of affected him, but nonetheless, no production there. I know you guys like Jake Ferguson. I like him too, but he's not there. He hasn't arrived yet. So that has something to do with it as well. So for him to do that and to be second in league in QBR, to be second team All-Pro, second in the MVP discussion, I think that alone warrants him to be at least 7.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I'd rather have Dak Prescott than Josh Allen at this point. And I know that might be crazy for some people to think, but for me, they're kind of not the same, but they, in terms of success, they're a little bit the same, minus Josh Allen going to that AFC Championship long ago, where people had the idea that him and Mahomes were going to be rivals. for the next 10 years. And everyone was wrong about that. But I think Dak did have a less talented offensive team around him. And you guys know how I feel about that defense and about Micah Parsons and that defense.
Yeah.
So for me, it's Dak at number 7.
I would agree with all of what you're saying about Dak versus Allen. I don't think that you can make a case for Josh Allen being a better quarterback than Dak Prescott. To me, it feels like my frustration with the Dak Prescott experience only amplifies with Josh Allen. I believe in terms of peak, if everything is going 100% correct, I think you get a little bit of a higher peak out of Josh Allen than you get out of Dak Prescott, because I believe that he is a more versatile runner of the ball. But when it comes to the depths, I mean, when Josh Allen is off, it is terrible how bad he can be.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe that you can make a case for why you put Josh Allen above Dak. Here is a name that I want to throw out for consideration at 7. This is someone who I put at 7, who is not Dak, who is not Allen, and I might be putting him a little bit high just to make sure he gets on this list. But I think a lot of the conversation we had with Stroud, you can have the exact same conversation with Jordan Love. Nobody was expecting Love to be this good this quick. No one was expecting Love to be able to lead this team to the playoffs. Everybody thought that they were going to be out of the playoffs. You have a bunch of young, unproven receivers, and he absolutely cooked this year. You go to the Dallas game, right out of the gate, immediately, he was cooking. The youngest team ever in the playoffs, like average age of any NFL team ever. Those Packers were the youngest team. They got a win. It was a 7 seed that ended up winning. And so I'll put Dak 7, but we need to make sure Jordan Love gets on this list somewhere, because what he was able to do this year with that team, he's a top 10 guy, man. And the thing about Jordan Love is a lot of the same thing with Stroud, a lot of the same thing with Purdy. Because they don't have to pay him anything, he's not going anywhere. I mean, this Packers, they're going to be a good team. They started off the year rough, but, man, they started clicking. And it wasn't clicking because their defense was throwing shutouts like with Josh Allen. Their defense was clicking because of – or the Packers were clicking because of their offense. So, originally I had put Love at 7, but I can – change that to put Dak at 7, because that's where it looks like the conversation's heading. Yeah. And so we'll put Dak 7.
Yeah, and to your Jordan Love point, at some point I agree with you. I'm gonna have him on this top 10 list because he proved something. He was 2nd in the league in touchdown passes this year, 9th in QBR. He had a top 10 defense, the 8th ranked offensive line, but his receiving core was 24th. Now, yes. I think at the start of next year, I think that will go up, because I think that receiving core proves something. And his Cowboy, and again, not to take away from what Jordan Love did against the Cowboys, because he did play phenomenal. His receivers were open like by 10 yards, like throughout the entire game, where it was actually ridiculous how well they were doing against our secondary. But yeah, I think he's going to be on this list somewhere for me. And so I think he's clearly not better than Dak, obviously, but I think you just throwing out like, hey, let's make sure we don't forget this guy. I'm with you.
Who is the guy? Who's up? Is it Dak? You said Dak at 7?
I said Dak
at 7. Okay, whatever. I mean, you bring up second MVP voting, second all pro. Jared Goff hasn't even done that. Hasn't even been considered for MVP, but whatever. What do I know? I would probably say
my boy's salty.
I mean, it just doesn't make it. We're being inconsistent, and it's sad, but it's whatever. But I think, man, I kind of want to put. I kind of want to put Jordan Love over Josh Allen. I kind of do. Obviously, Aaron Jones is better than James Cook, but Stephon Diggs.
Well, Aaron Jones was hurt like a majority of the season.
But when he came, in the postseason when he came on,
he was great. He was great.
200 yards, scored 3 touchdowns. Receivers were open by, I wouldn't even say 10 yards. I mean, there was one throw he's open by 30 yards. And Jordan Love underthrew it, but it didn't matter because he was that open and he scored a touchdown. But I think when you look at a quarterback like Jordan Love, who had some growing pains earlier in the year, which should have been expected because this is his first full season of playing. And LaFleur has to figure him out. But just the way that he went down the stretch late in the year, and the fact that this receiving core is young, I mean, you have to feel good about. I feel better about Jordan Love than I do about Josh Allen. So I'm with. I mean, I have to be okay with Dak at 7, but what about Jordan Love at 8? Is 8 too high?
I think you'd probably
give him another year.
I think you need to put Allen at 8.
Okay,
I agree. I think you need to put him at 8 because his overall career is more than Jordan Love. I think Savage, whenever we did that TikTok way long ago that generated the most buzz that we've ever had on the show.
We don't need to bring that up. We don't need to bring that up.
But
I wasn't wrong on that take. I'm just going to say that.
But I agree. This is where that is the most true. It's been a year that he's been a starter.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult for me to put him above Josh Allen after one season when Josh Allen has been, yes, his turnovers are the biggest eyesore in the history of us evaluating quarterback. It just is. I think that's what we're all looking at on reasons why he's not higher on this list because of his turnover rate.
Mm-hmm.
But he has done a lot more than Jordan. That's just a fact. And so I think Josh Allen 8 is where we need to go.
Which would then put Love at 9.
Put Love at 9.
I think we can all agree on that.
I'll pitch out this name for 10. I mean, I won't say who I really want to say at 10, but I'll say this name at 10. I think Justin Herbert deserves the 10 spot. I think what he's going to do in a Harbaugh system this year is going to make him jump up this list drastically. I think if we're going to talk about the coaches being a big reason why quarterbacks aren't able to achieve their peak, then if we have a case for Dak, we have 13 cases for Justin Herbert. With what Staley has done with him, who is their offensive coordinator? Anthony Lynn. Who is this guy? Like, nobody knows these guys. They shouldn't probably have the job in the first place.
They shouldn't.
And so I think you put a legit coach behind him. You know, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with Herbert. The name who I really wanted to say was Jaden Daniels, but we don't got to get there right now. We don't got to do that right now. So.
No, go ahead, Dave.
I'm gonna say no to Justin Herbert because you have about 4 to 5 games this year to where he was the reason why they lost games because he threw a late game interception. If you look at the Dallas game, we should have lost to the Chargers. Justin Herbert missed about 3 to 4 throws that if he makes them, they're all touchdowns.
Yeah, and there was a topic that we had earlier in the year where we're like, what's going on with Justin Herbert? Does he even deserve to be considered a top 10 quarterback? Because he was consistently over, I think, a 4 or 5 game stretch, consistently missing throws. Now,
it had nothing to do with coaching. It was just he missed the open guy.
But I agree with Savage. I think it's worth considering. I think next year when we actually see what happens, it probably will change in my mind. I just think,
for sure. Yeah,
I just
he's probably going to be in the top.
That we had last year about Justin Herbert had nothing to do with coaching and everything to do how he was playing at the time. Not to say that his coach was fantastic and his roster was great.
There weren't.
But he had opportunities and he just couldn't make them. Couldn't do them. That is amazing.
So then, who do you got at 10, David?
You
got Lawrence.
No, I mean, to me, 10 is a top. I mean, I'm not going to put Herbert in there because he hasn't even won a playoff game, not once. Savage is going to be mad at me, but I put Brock Purdy at 10. Put him at 10. I mean, you have the postseason success that he had. They don't win the game in Detroit without him. They don't win the game in Green Bay without him. And I think he played well enough in the Super Bowl. And if you want to talk about Lamar Jackson and his winning percentage, you should look at Brock Purdy's. So I would go for Brock Purdy.
You're just doing okay. Audience, viewers at home. David's trying to be sneaky here.
Not.
He's not telling you what's really happening. David is so mad that he had to move Dak from 6 to 7.
Actually, I'm mad that I had to move him from 5 to 7.
What's happening? He's so mad he had to move Dak from 5 to 7 that he's trying to get me really mad by considering Brock Purdy a top 10 quarterback in this league. That's what's happening here. This is the only – he doesn't believe this. You need to know this through audience. He doesn't believe this. He's just trying to get me mad right now. I just want to set the record straight.
I'm just saying San Francisco, they have not looked this good offensively with any other quarterback that they've had, which I get it's not that hard, but at the same time, they needed him to do what he did for them to win in Detroit, to do what he did to win in Green Bay. Again, we're talking about big moments here.
I don't disagree. It doesn't make him a top 10 quarterback.
Who do you have at 10?
He said Justin Herbert.
Herbert.
I think Herbert's a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. I think if you put Justin Herbert in the San Francisco 49ers, he'll miss the win the Super Bowl.
Like he did earlier in the year.
I think they easily win the Super Bowl.
Savage, you're going to hate me too. I have Brock Purdy at 10.
Fine, let's do it.
We talked about that criteria. His statistics, he led the league in QBR, had 31 touchdowns, had the best quarterback of any numbers metrically in the National Football League. And in the postseason, like David said, his QBR 62.1 above average, but he had a game-winning drive. Against Detroit, his QBR was 88.2 game-winning drive. Against Kansas City, he had a 69.8, and every time he left the field, they had the lead. Every time.
Well, I can just be completely truthful.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that I was able to make sure Purdy got to 10. I thought we were going to try to put him in borderline top 5.
No, because again, we recognize that he does have a team around him. He does have a really great coach, even though it's a coach that can't get it done in the biggest of games. But
because he never has a legit quarterback, because he spends no money on the quarterback and all the money on the rest of the team.
I mean, at the time that Jimmy G got his contract, he was the highest paid quarterback. So that's not true.
Then that GM needs to be. Like, there needs to be some court cases out.
Yep.
But what I'm telling you is that even when he got that contract, they went to a Super Bowl. With the highest contract, he went to a Super Bowl.
We recognize how talented this team is. And I think that's why we didn't have him like in the top 5 or anything like that. Even though he had the third best defense, the second best receiving core. the best running back in the game.
Best running back in the game. Their offensive line was 20th.
Yeah.
Offensive line was 20th or 18th. Joe Burrow's offensive line, when he went to the Super Bowl, was 20th.
It was trash. It should have been lower than 20th. He got sacked 53 times that year.
But we also said in the Super Bowl, like if Brock Purdy would have had one more second, on the throw to Jennings,
he throws a touchdown. And I think the difference between the game is that he kicked a field goal and Patrick Mahomes scored a touchdown. That was the difference.
Yeah.
That was the difference in the game. Just 3 points was the difference in the game.
Well, yeah.
Personally, I don't view Purdy as a top 10 quarterback, but this is a collaborative list, so I'll bend on that.
And here's what I want to say about Brock Purdy at 10. That also is not set in stone. But his playoff performance says that he should be a top 10 quarterback. Now, I'm with you. If Justin Herbert comes out here and balls next year, that's not even I like Brock Purdy. Like, for me, that's a guy that I ride for, that I root for. But Justin Herbert is immensely more talented, but the fact of the matter is he hasn't done anything. And he's had opportunities to do things. That's what David was saying. He had opportunities to win more games than he actually has in the regular season, because regular season is important too, because we've done it for all these other guys. That's why we did for Lamar Jackson. But Justin Herbert has not had much of success when he's had opportunities, especially when he had the opportunity to beat Jacksonville, where he had a 24-point lead, where Trevor Lawrence threw four interceptions in the first half?
I think it was first quarter.
And he still lost that game.
Now I'm with you. Coaching, to me, is the biggest reason for the lack of Justin Herbert's success throughout his entire career.
Yes.
But I think that if he wouldn't have had those moments this year to where you can point to him and says, you got to make that throw. Like, and it's not even like, it wasn't even like tight window throws. It was like, they're wide open. Now, to be fair, because I'm all about consistency. Now that I do think about it, there are also moments this year where Quentin Johnson dropped so many passes this season.
So many, yes.
Many passes this year.
So many,
even like at the I think there was one game, or maybe even two games actually. Oh, I might switch now. Actually, I might say Herbert because I'm trying to be fair, and there's been two games this year to where Justin Herbert's leading a game-winning drive, and I think in one moment, like, Quentin Johnson dropped it, and in another moment, Quentin Johnson fumbled and turned the ball over. And so if I'm gonna be consistent, because you guys gave that up, but if I'm gonna be consistent, I have to put Justin Herbert above him, because he doesn't have the coaching, he doesn't have the roster, and he had the moments to have a better record. I don't like, and I guess let me ask, did any of us have the Chargers going to the playoffs this year?
No,
I don't think we did.
No, we didn't. I think we said they would be competitive because of Justin, but again, he got hurt. And
I think they were. And if the receivers, Quentin Johnson would have made and I think they also had Austin Eckler out for like 6 games this year.
Being a Keenan Allen fantasy football owner, he was hurt for the last 5 games of the year.
Yeah. So
when Josh Allen or when Justin Herbert played, he was out.
Yeah, he was out. Yeah. I think Keenan always misses an average of like 4 to 5 games a year.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, as good as he is, that's just the reality of Keenan Allen. But like, he was down Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen was in and out of the lineup. Yeah, Quentin Johnson dropping the ball. and unless your name is Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa, you really don't think anything about that defense either. And then you had Brandon Staley as your head coach. Like, yeah, I'm going Herbert 10. Like,
yeah,
it has to be.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I just think that the resume doesn't say enough to put him there, and especially because yes, he had drops, but we also have to be fair. He missed a ton of throws, like not even in the vicinity. Not in the vicinity.
But here's where we're having. I think this is a different conversation that we can have later on. But like, so far, Justin hasn't done anything to justify the contract that he got. So far, I mean, as much as he's paid. Now, that's the market. That's what he's supposed to get because he's the next man up. But you could say that about pretty much every single quarterback except for Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. So I think so he should have done more with the contract that he's gotten, but realistically, when you look at the construction of his team, their reliance on him for any success, and also I think because of his lack of showing up when he has opportunities to, I think that's why you put him at 10.
Well, here's the issue.
His talent
Here's the issue. His contract makes it hard for them to get players. It makes it hard. And so
it's not just his contract though. I mean, they have a lot of guys.
I agree with that. But here's the thing: you get rid of those contracts, who are you going to get in there to fill it? If you trade away those contacts, as big of the names as they are, their talent level is going to also drop. Getting rid of those players, so who are you going to get to replace it?
Yeah. Well, so
I think that's the issue that they're going to have to go for. For me, I think it's going to take a little bit of time, and I'm gonna give Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert a lot of grace in the next year or 2 years, because I know they have to essentially gut this team and rebuild it quickly.
Yeah. I mean, you can give him grace. I don't think that Jim's going to need it. I mean, he somehow is able to. I mean, we thought the 49ers were going to be bad for a couple of years when he took over, and look what he did. Had him in the championship game. Like, he won. So, and that was with Alex Smith at quarterback.
Yeah.
So, Jim knows how to develop talent too. So even if they let those guys go,
he knows how to spot it as well.
He can bring in guys pretty cheap to fill this roster. All right, but that's our list. We've done it. We've done the job that we've set to do. Just gonna run through. We're gonna run through this list once again. So at number 1, Patrick Mahomes. At 2, Joe Burrow. 3, Lamar Jackson. 4, CJ Stroud. Matthew Stafford rounds out the top 5. Jared Goff at 6, Dak Prescott at 7, Josh Allen at 8, Jordan Love at 9, and Justin Herbert at number 10. Let us know what you think about our list. Let us know if we got it wrong, or what you would do. I was very disappointed, and I think it's Daniel's fault.
Why is it my fault?
I think you scared everybody because you kept calling people idiots of their list, and so no one wanted to send in their list because you're rude.
Savage, I already told you this, but they put like Justin Fields, Kyler Murray in their list. Even Matthew Stafford, not even like what he did this year, but when he was hurt and looked like buns, they put those guys in their top 10 list.
Well, it turned out that Matthew Stafford was a really great pick, but for Herbert and Kyler, that's bad.
No. Fields. For Fields and Kyler.
Yeah. Sorry. Fields and Kyler. That's wild.
And again, if you guys are going to be babies, just say you're going to be babies. That was a year ago. When David, you made the announcement that we were doing this list the last episode, and I said nothing.
It's true.
I didn't say anything aggressive. I didn't say anything too horrendous. I just said, send us your list, and that was pretty much it. So if you guys are scared and being a bunch of babies, just say that. Just say that.
Well,
Here's the thing, because they can't come up with a top 10 list. I dare them to come up with a top 10 list better than what the three of us just came up with.
Oh, well, our list is perfect. There's
agree.
not a single change that you could make to this list to make it more accurate. Don't you believe that to be true, Daniel?
I agree. I believe it.
I believe it too. David, don't you?
Heck no, I don't believe it. Heck no, I don't believe it. Golly.
Well, you're going to have so much fun getting to make the official Double Take top 10 quarterback graphic.
Can't wait for that post.
I'm going to put an asterisk by it for sure.
No.
I'm going to put an asterisk by it for sure.
Hey,
I didn't get my way. That's what it's going to be like.
No, exactly. You know what? Yeah. I need to work on my dictatorship tendencies. But that's going to do it for us here on Double Take, an NFL podcast. Thank you so much for joining us as we talk through our top 10 lists. But until next time, for Savage and Daniel, this is David for the show. God bless.
See ya.